Hey, y'all, welcome back to Verdict to Wire. Well, Fairgrounds is opening this weekend, so let's take a look at the late pick five. So, this is the Fairgrounds late pick five, and it comprises races 6 through 10 on Saturday, November 18th. And we take a look at the field, and the first race, first leg, is the sixth race. It's a maiden special weight for 52,000, 5.5 furlongs on the turf for 2-year-olds. And if we look at this field, you can see it's a pretty good sized one. Oy Vey, I think, makes a lot of sense. He's logical. He's trained by Brad Cox, who's 36% first time Lasix. So you got to like that. This was in the 12 hole in the last one and carried wide, but did keep on well. It's kind of race you can sort of draw a line through it. It was in the slop, and so I'm not going to put too much stock in it. It's Brad Cox. The second start, this one should move forward. Looks pretty logical. Tom Amos is really good with first-time starters, so we're going to throw in the Sugar Hook number 5. He's dangerous at fairgrounds always, and I really like Twirling Candy as a first-time sire. They're always really sharp out of the gate, most importantly. And in this race, in particular, gate speed is going to be crucial. Twirling Candy's 15% first-time turf, and it is the dam's first foal, so we're not sure about that. But what I really liked was the nice series of 5 furlong drills on the work tab, and that tells me that this horse is ready to fire. So I like Sugar Hook in here. Last attack we're going to throw in here, Jade Gelman, not a trainer I know a whole lot about, but she is 22% second with the second start, and she's pretty good off the layoff. Obviously, the post is going to be an issue, but in the last one, this one kind of had the look of one who liked the cutback, was running at a mile on the turf, and kind of faded late. So I think less ground is definitely one. What this one will appreciate, though, the 12 hole, again, is going to be a bit of a challenge. Do Your Job looks to me like kind of a project for Steve Asmussen. Going back to the distance of his best race, and Asmussen is 24% with first-time Lasix, but again, I do like this. This one looks like a project, and towards the end of the year with 2-year-olds, that's what you're going to find with some of the bigger trainers. You can't underestimate Asmussen at all, of course, but one thing I will note is that Jamie Torres, while being a pretty good jockey on dirt, he did well at Saratoga. He's not the greatest on turf, and he's only wins at 4%. So I think that kind of underscores the fact that this one may be a work in progress. So I think probably Do Your Job is likely going to be an underlay. Honky Tonk Highway has been knocking on the door for a while and now gets Lasix for Brett Calhoun. He's 22% with that angle. City of Light is a good turf sire, and I think this one will likely take to it pretty well. And then finally, Norwich. Sherry DeVoe is really good. DeVoe is really good with second-time starters, and you also get Lasix. Had some trouble in the debut, but did keep on well, and I always like to see that they don't get just throw in the towel when things get a little tough. So I expect this one to improve and will likely be a contender in this race. If I had to pick one, I think Oy Vey is the most logical to take it. I think you're going to get a decent price with Sugar Hook, and Norwich looks to be a logical win candidate as well. The second leg is race 7. It's the Jacob V. Morial Memorial, and it's running 1 mile and 70 yards for 3-year-olds and up Louisiana breds. And if we look at this field, Mangum is a horse. He's dual entered with a race later in this sequence, so they obviously want to check to see where Mangum's actually going to run. However, I think this is probably a better spot for him. He's an up and coming 3-year-old. This is and probably more attuned to sprints while this is 2 turns. So we'll just have to see. But Delhomme is the trainer is 2 for 5 or 40% with a $7.32 ROI sprint to root. So if Mangum does run, this is a good angle for the trainer. Had a nice win in the last versus Open Company, which is always good to see going into these state bred races. And Corey Lanerie is definitely an upgrade jockey-wise. So I think Mangum's ready to run a pretty good race depending upon which one they decide to enter him into. Woods and Water is just a win machine. This one's firing fresh, and this is a down and distance that he likes. Hasn't won at Fairgrounds, and that's really the only big concern that I do have. May not like the track, or in many respects, it might be some of the competition's been a little salty, so that may be a drawback. This one fits. I think I just kind of like for underneath. There's others that have a little bit more appeal, but Woods on Water, I think, is one you can absolutely use. Behemoth Star's biggest advantage is not having touch upon a star to race against. Finished second to that horse a bunch of times, and I don't think this horse has second ice. I think it's just touch upon a star. If you've seen him run, it's a pretty awesome state-bred horse. Behemoth Star ran well against Open Company in the last, and again, that's a really good thing to see going into these state-bred stakes races. Firing fresh at a distance where he's never been out of the money. I think Behemoth Star makes a lot of sense in this race. Cosmic Train has 3 of 5 wins at the fairgrounds, so I think perhaps the track will pick this one up a little bit. Hasn't run since August, but the tab does show some interest in that this one is going to be ready to roll. Needs a higher top end to factor or to even win this race. So I think under is probably more likely and will be coming late. And, at the fairgrounds with a long stretch, who knows? But I just like others better. I think underneath is probably more likely. Who Took the Money is an ultra-consistent horse. So the Gold Cup, the last race where he didn't really run very much, is a bit of a concern. However, it was off the bench, and sometimes horses just need a race. It could be one of those issues. But I look deeper into this one's form, and you find that he ran a dud like this a couple years ago and then came right back with a win on the Louisiana turf. So the fact that this horse is just so ultra consistent, I have to believe he's going to rebound from it. And especially, you can't underestimate, especially this is a horse for the course and the distance. So Who Took the Money is one you absolutely have to use, and I think is a win candidate in this race. Leg 3 is the 8th race. It's an option 50, non-winners of 3 lifetime, and a mile and a 16th on the turf for 3-year-olds and up fillies and mares. And this is an interesting race. There's quite a few in here who have some vulnerability, so I think there's some value to be had here. Rose Palace, in particular, is coming off pairing the career high buyer off the bench, and it is the first of the route. But the trainer Bourgeois is 25% at that angle. And this one looks to be steadily on the improve. And I think if they can get 2 turns out of this one, could factor in this race. And I'm expecting a pretty good-sized effort from Rose Palace. Creative Cairo is one that is kind of danger Will Robinson for me. Just ran a career high in the last at Longer, but the last time she ran a career high, she bounced badly in the next race, and that's not a good pattern, obviously. Certainly competitive within the class, but the thing is, when you've got a regression that's pretty likely, and if you look at her pattern since that regression, since that bounce race, she got a little bit better speed figure-wise every single race until culminating with the career high buyer. So I think she may have peaked in the last race, and that's why I think, you certainly want to use her, but I think you have to do it advisedly, and I'd be very reluctant to put her on top, but I think underneath probably is a good bet. Tufani is one that's kind of interesting. Shipping in after an okay effort in the Virginia Oaks, Michael Stidham sending this one is really the appeal. Though the tab has some gaps, and, was running against 3-year-olds only last time, and would have liked to have seen a little bit better race, but was up near the pace and kept on pretty well while weakening late. And so just the fact that Stidham is sending her here, just got the feeling that this one's going to run pretty well. Just call it a hunch on my part, but a prime win candidate, I don't think so, but I just have a feeling this one's going to be in the mix somewhere, so we include. Trying My Heart Out cost 400,000, so there have been some expectations with this one. Will likely be the pace in the race, and again, there's some vulnerability in this race. So front runners on the turf, these are the kind of races that sometimes they can steal. The tab looks good to me, and this one should fire well, being fresh. Gonna have some competition for the lead from Yankee Dollar, I think, but being a little bit to the inside might give the advantage. And Trying My Heart Out, you're going to get a price. I think one to maybe as a wire candidate. Yankee Dollar is kind of hard to knock when you look at the record of 10 in the money finishes in 10 races, 5 wins, 4 seconds. The outside post is really the biggest issue for this one. She is an absolute front runner, wants the lead, needs the lead. All systems are go. I think this horse is going to run a good race. I just worry about using up a little too much energy early to get on the engine. But I think Yankee Dollar is one that you have to include for sure. Sweet Chablis is interesting because was on a good progression prior to the layoff, and she's certainly going to have to step it up in class, no doubt about it. But it looks like a move forward is possible. Now, I'm not sure that this one will have it on the top end to win it, but I think is one you can comfortably include at a price. Still we'll get the jump on some of the later runners, but I don't know that the top end is there or she can make big enough a move to win this race. But I think it'd be competitive, and I'd use underneath. And then finally, we have Present Moment. The last two have excuses, in my opinion. Now, first of all, she ran at Santa Anita, never run out west before, might have not have liked the firmer turf. And then Kentucky Downs is such a quirky track, we can always draw a line through those races. Prior to those two, displayed some promise since coming over from Great Britain, and a third off the layoff, I think, should make for a solid effort. You're definitely going to get a price, and I wouldn't sleep on Present Moment. I think is poised to run a really good race and could definitely factor. Fourth leg is the 9th race, and it's the Larry D. Robidoux Memorial, and it's run at 6 furlongs for 3-year-olds and up Louisiana breds. You have a big field here, so as we know, a lot of times in these stakes races, you're going to have a lot of speed early on, and particularly the way the Fairgrounds track runs, it's bred for closers. So the early speed runners, to me, are a little bit of a disadvantage, particularly when you have so many of them in this race. Of those, Mike J, I think, is one who was feeling pretty good prior to the layoff in August, had a couple of solid races, has a good tab and a bullet in the last, so on the rail has a tactical advantages over some of the other early runners, and so Mike J is one I think we can use in the mix for sure. Who knows, could steal it on the front end if the others get tangled up. Excuse me. Jackhammer, really, the post is obviously a big issue in the 10 hole, and the gate's a little bit of a concern, as in the last one, bobbled at the break and cost every chance. But prior to that, was on the improve, and with a freshening from Brett Calhoun, I think a good effort is likely. Just going to have to work out a trip. If they go for the lead, that's probably going to use the source up. But if they try to just rate a little bit, if this one can, then maybe has a chance. Scuteria is getting progressively better, but hasn't run since August, and that is a theme. There's a lot of these that got a long layoff. I'd be more encouraged if I saw more works on the tab, but Shane Wilson is 18% with 46 to 90 days. I'm sure he knows a lot more about training than I do. However, I would need a price in order to consider this one, but I think underneath is very possible. Mangum is cross-entered in the Memorial, as we mentioned, but looks more of a fit here to me as a sprinter. Another on the improve who off the bench had a nice N2X effort at Delta Downs. And I think if this one runs in this race as a prime win candidate, especially being able to run off the pace, might get a jump on some of the closers. Lang's Day was a willing third off the bench, and that should put this one in position to run a good race, I think. Again, the closing style is definitely a plus, at Fairgrounds. And this one is a speed figure-wise fit, a class fit as well. It's likely going to have pace to run to given the field size. And most important to me is this one has root stamina. Has run it 2 turns before, so when others are backing up after a torrid pace, this one will be running late. And I like Langsday as a major player in here. And then finally, we'll talk about Black Sword. Was in top form early in the year at Evangeline Downs, then crashed in the Louisiana Cup. However, the last race broke really slow, but closed very well after the slow start, and gave signs that he's feeling good and ready to come back. So would need a better break, obviously, but if you could just linger, off the leaders, I think this one is definitely one to consider, and Corey Lanerie is absolutely a plus. So here's the last leg of the Pick 5. It's the 10th race. It's a maiden special weight for 52,000, 5.5 furlongs for 2-year-old fillies, Louisiana bred. Sacred Saint would be the first I'd look at it. Pretty logical with Steve Asmussen as the trainer. Cost $100K and the stud fee was $7,500. Star Guitar, who's the sire in Louisiana. Tab looks solid. No reason to not to include. Platinum Minute gets class relief after running at Churchill Downs in Saratoga. And at Saratoga, he had to run against Candide, who we all know for the Breeders' Cup. He's firing fresh, should improve. Good and Sassy had an ambitious placing, I thought, to debut in a stakes race. Showed some speed, and the fact that it was running in a stakes race, I think, says it all. So this one is another one likely to move forward. Undercover Girl, pretty logical. Brad Cox firster, solid tab, looks ready to go as well. Then with the 11, No Fear. A typical maiden debut. He broke slow, but he closed really wide. I mean, if you watch the replay, he was out about 6 or 7 wide. He's parked outside this time, but showed enough to think that, to me, it looked like that this is a horse who will move forward. Perhaps he can get a better trip, even though he's out on the outside post. And then finally, A Misdemeanor. Shane Wilson is 27% with the second start. Had a decent debut, showing some speed. The post is an issue, but I think this one looks ready to move forward. Kind of hard to separate any of them, really. I think this is a spread race, but we'll just try to go with as much value as we can get. Probably Undercover Girl would be the one I think probably most likely to take this one down. But there are some worthy rivals in there, and maybe Good and Sassy from the lead can perhaps try to wire the field. But I think this is definitely a spread race. So here's what our ticket looks like for the late pick 5. In leg 1, race 6. That should say 6 through 10. Races 6 through 10. Sorry about that. Leg 1, we're going to go with 5, 6, and 10. And then you'll see in races 7 and 9, I've parenthetically put Mangum, and we'll just use whichever race that he decides to run, they decide to put him in. So we'll go to either 2, 6, 7 in the 7th, or we'll go 5, 6, 9 in the 9th. But in the 7th leg, we definitely want to use 2, 7. And then in race 8, we're going to use 3, 9, 10, and 11. Leg 4, race 9, we're going to use 6 and 9. And then in race 10, we're going to use 3, 6, and 9. So our total ticket is $112 on a 50-cent base. And we want to keep it economical. I could definitely add a couple more in that 5th leg. So I would go for value. But I think the 3, 6, 9 are your most solid win candidates there. So that's the late pick 5. It's a pretty wide open sequence, I think, and so we had to spread a little more than we usually do, and hopefully we'll take it down. We're going to have more postings concerning this weekend, so be on the lookout for those. And of course, if you do like content like this, please like and subscribe. And thanks to all of you who have come on board. That's it from here. I'll talk to you soon, and please be well.